So, you think you know everything about 70s television. Sure, you remember the Brady Bunch, Happy Days, and All in the Family. But what about the shows that were just weird enough to slip through the cracks? The ones that had decent runs, solid casts, and somehow vanished from our collective memory faster than platform shoes and pet rocks. Today, we're getting into 6 70s shows that were bigger deals than you remember. They were shows that launched careers, broke ground, and left their mark, but somehow got buried under an avalanche of nostalgia for the bigger hits. Let's take a trip back to the decade that gave us some of the genuinely great television that deserves way more recognition. Show number 6, What's Happening? Let's start with What's Happening, which aired on ABC from 1976 to 1979 and was way ahead of its time. This sitcom followed 3 black teenagers in Los Angeles, Raj, Dwayne, and Rerun. But here's what made it controversial. It was one of the first sitcoms to show black teenagers just being teenagers, without heavy social messaging or stereotypes. Ernest Thomas played Raj, the aspiring writer trying to stay out of trouble, while Haywood Nelson was Dwayne, the smooth-talking ladies' man. But Fred Berry as Rerun became a cultural phenomenon with his dancing skills and "hey, hey, hey" catchphrase. Kids everywhere were copying his moves and quoting his lines. But here's the tragic part. Berry struggled with weight issues, drug addiction, and financial problems throughout his life. Despite being a beloved figure who influenced hip-hop culture and breakdancing, he died in 2003 at the age of 52, largely forgotten by mainstream media. His funeral was paid for by his What's Happening co-stars because he died nearly broke. Somehow, What's Happening gets overshadowed when people talk about groundbreaking 70s television. It proved you could have a successful black family sitcom without making it about issues, just real people living real lives. The show spawned a sequel series and remains a cultural touchstone that deserves more recognition. Show number 5, Barney Miller. Here's a show that ran for 8 seasons and somehow doesn't get mentioned with All in the Family or MASH, despite being just as smart and socially conscious. Barney Miller was the most realistic workplace comedy ever created. It just happened to be set in a police precinct in Greenwich Village. Hal Linden starred as Captain Barney Miller, the perpetually patient supervisor dealing with a parade of criminals, witnesses, and neighborhood characters. The genius was that it all took place in one room, the squad room, and the humor came from real human interactions, not manufactured situations. Here's what was controversial for its time. The criminals weren't cartoons or stereotypes. They were real people with understandable motivations. Prostitutes, pickpockets, con artists who were just trying to survive in New York City. The cops weren't heroes or villains. They were working stiffs, trying to get through their shifts with their sanity intact. The show tackled serious issues that other comedies wouldn't touch. Police corruption, racism, urban decay, mental illness, and economic inequality. But it did so with a light touch that respected the audience's intelligence and never felt preachy or heavy-handed. Here's the kicker. Barney Miller was appointment television for adults. It aired during prime time and treated viewers like intelligent human beings, capable of understanding nuanced humor and complex characters. The writing influenced everything from Night Court to Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but somehow gets forgotten in discussions of great 70s comedy. Now, here's your homework. I want you to ask your siblings or that one friend who remembers everything about the 70s, which of these shows did they watch religiously? Better yet, show them this video and watch their faces light up when they remember these classics. Then come back here and tell me their reactions in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon, because we're just getting started on our journey through television's forgotten gems. Show number 4, The Rockford Files. The Rockford Files should be mentioned alongside Columbo and Kojak, but somehow gets forgotten, which is criminal because James Garner created one of television's most realistic and relatable detectives. Garner played Jim Rockford, a private investigator who lived in a trailer on Malibu Beach and charged $200 a day plus expenses. Here's what was revolutionary. This wasn't a tough guy detective show. Rockford got beat up regularly, ran from fights when he was outnumbered, and often solved cases through persistence and charm rather than violence. He drove a gold Pontiac Firebird, struggled financially, and had realistic relationships with his ex-con friend Angel and his worried father Rocky. The show's opening answering machine messages became legendary among fans.
You're full of bullshit, my friend. I will sue you.
Perfectly setting the tone for each episode. This is Norma at the bank. The computer has your card down as stolen. I just thought you'd like to know. These 30-second gems were comedy gold that told you everything about Rockford's chaotic life. Now, what made the show special was its realism. Rockford got hurt in fights and stayed hurt for multiple episodes. His cases were complicated moral puzzles where the bad guys didn't always get caught and justice wasn't always served. The clients sometimes lied to him, stiffed him on payment, and turned out to be worse than the people they wanted investigated. The show influenced every detective series that followed, from Magnum P.I. to The Mentalist, but gets overshadowed by flashier crime dramas when people discuss 70s television. Garner's performance remains one of the most naturalistic lived-in characters in TV history. Show number 3, Taxi. Here's where things get absolutely crazy. Taxi premiered in 1978 and launched more careers than a Hollywood talent agency, featuring future superstars who were basically unknowns at the time. The show was about cab drivers working the night shift at the Sunshine Cab Company in New York, each with dreams of something bigger. Think about this cast and try not to lose your mind. Danny DeVito played Louis De Palma, the troll-like dispatcher who was part Napoleon, part demon. This was before Batman Returns, before It's Always Sunny, before he became the Danny DeVito cultural icon we know today. You could watch him developing his signature style week by week. But the real jaw-dropper? The cast included Tony Danza as a boxer who drove cab between fights, Marilu Henner as a single mother and aspiring artist, and get this, Andy Kaufman as Latka Gravis, the foreign mechanic whose accent nobody could quite place. Andy Kaufman was doing his experimental comedy genius thing years before most of America had any idea who he was. Judd Hirsch anchored the cast as Alex Rieger, the veteran driver who served as the group's moral center. But here's what made Taxi different from other workplace comedies. These characters were genuinely struggling. They weren't quirky office workers with middle-class problems. They were working-class people dealing with real economic hardship, broken dreams, and the daily grind of survival. The show won 18 Emmy nominations and 3 wins, including Outstanding Comedy Series. But maybe it was too real, too grounded in actual working-class struggle to become the comfort food television that people nostalgically remember from the 70s. Number 2, Welcome Back, Kotter.
Welcome back.
Welcome Back, Kotter introduced the world to a young comedian named John Travolta. And here's what's amazing. You could literally watch a future movie star developing his craft week by week. The show premiered in 1975, and by 1977, Travolta was starring in Saturday Night Fever. Talk about perfect timing. Gabe Kaplan starred as Gabe Kotter, a teacher returning to his old Brooklyn high school to teach a remedial class of underachievers called the Sweat Hogs. The students were the heart of the show. Travolta as Vinnie Barbarino, the pretty boy with more hair than brains. Robert Haggis as Juan Epstein, who had excuse notes for everything signed by his mother. Lawrence Hilton Jacobs as Freddie Boom Boom Washington. And Ron Paello as Arnold Horshack, whose distinctive laugh became a national sensation. Travolta's Barbarino wasn't just comic relief. He created a fully realized character with his own speech patterns, mannerisms, and surprising depth. Up your nose with a rubber hose became a catchphrase that kids shouted in playgrounds across America. But here's the thing. Travolta was developing the charisma and screen presence that would make him a movie star. But here's where it gets controversial. As Travolta's movie career exploded, he appeared less frequently in later seasons, and the show's energy noticeably flagged. The producers tried to replace his star power with new characters, but lightning doesn't strike twice. The series ended in 1979, just as Travolta was becoming a global superstar with Grease. The other sweat hogs continued acting with varying degrees of success, but none achieved Travolta's stratospheric fame. Ron Paello, Horshack, struggled with being typecast and died in 2012. The show remains a perfect time capsule of 70s optimism about education and the transformative power of caring teachers. And show number 1, The Odd Couple. Here's our number 1 forgotten gem. The Odd Couple gave us one of the greatest sitcom partnerships in television history and basically invented the template for every buddy comedy that followed. Tony Randall and Jack Klugman as Felix Unger and Oscar Madison created comedy gold, but somehow this show gets overlooked when people discuss great 70s sitcoms. Based on Neil Simon's Broadway play and the movie starring Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau, the TV version took the concept and ran with it for 5 seasons. Tony Randall played Felix, the neat freak photographer with allergies, neuroses, and an obsession with cleanliness that bordered on the pathological. Jack Klugman was Oscar, the slob sports writer, who treated his apartment like a personal disaster zone. But here's what made it controversial and ahead of its time. It was really about male friendship, loneliness, and middle-aged men dealing with divorce and starting over. Both Felix and Oscar were dealing with failed marriages, figuring out how to live with another adult who had completely different ideas about everything from housekeeping to personal hygiene. Tony Randall's performance as Felix was a masterclass in comic precision. Every neurotic tic, every prissy complaint, every moment of hurt feelings was perfectly calibrated. He made Felix simultaneously annoying and sympathetic. You understood why Oscar wanted to strangle him, but you also felt sorry for his loneliness and insecurity. Jack Klugman balanced him perfectly, playing Oscar as genuinely good-hearted despite his slovenly ways. Their arguments felt real because their underlying affection for each other was genuine. The supporting cast included Al Molinaro as Murray the cop, one of Oscar's poker buddies, who would later become Al on Happy Days. The Odd Couple ran for 114 episodes and influenced everything from Perfect Strangers to The Big Bang Theory. The neat freak slob dynamic became such a standard comedy template that we take it for granted. But when people talk about great 70s sitcoms, it somehow gets overlooked. Maybe because it's been so influential that we forget how groundbreaking it was. So, there you have it. 6 shows that were bigger deals in the 70s than they get credit for today. The question is, how many of these did you watch religiously? Drop a comment below and let me know which of these shows deserves more recognition, and tell me about your favorite underrated 70s series that everyone seems to have forgotten. Because, let's be honest, the 70s gave us way more great television than just Happy Days and the Brady Bunch. And if you enjoyed this trip through television's overlooked gems, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the shows that shaped our childhoods, but somehow slipped through the cracks of nostalgia.